परं पश्चादहं यदि तच्च योगशिष्येत सोऽस्म्यहम् हृदेऽहं यत् प्रतीयेत न प्रतीयेत चात्मनि तद्विद्यादात्मनो माया यथा भासो यथा तमः यथामहन्ति भूतानि भूतेषु चावचिष्वन् प्रविष्टान्यप्रविष्टानि तथा तेषु न तेष्वहम् एतावदेव जिज्ञासं तत्त्वजिज्ञासुनात्मनः अन्यव्यतिरेकाभ्यां यत् स्यात् सर्वत्र सर्वदा यत् स्यात् सर्वत्र सर्वदा यत् स्यात् सर्वत्र सर्वदा वैष्णव जन तो तेरे कहे जे पीर पराए जाए। वैष्णव जन तो तेरे कहे जे पीर पराए जाए। पर दुख उपकार करे तोय, पर Namaskar. I would like to begin by expressing our gratitude to Savani Mudgal for her beautiful rendition of bhajans. And I'd like to thank you all for being here with us today to celebrate the life of Dr. Kavi Dutt Bhargava, a devoted husband, father, brother, grandfather, uncle, granduncle, and a dear friend to many, many people. Aside from being a loving and caring man, Kavi Mama, as a lot of us called him affectionately, was also an extremely well-respected doctor and teacher. Tributes that poured in and continue to do so from relatives, friends, patients, and students from all over the world show that he was deeply loved, highly respected, and will be terribly missed by many, many people. Kavi Mama was a generous human being who took care of other people's suffering, but hardly gave suffering to others. The way he went was typical of the way he was. He left us gently and quietly, giving no trouble to any of the people that he loved. Kavi Mama has left a fulsome legacy behind. There are many people today who would like to say a few words about Kavi Mama. And we begin with Binu Auntie, who has, along with Prabir Uncle, has shared a friendship with Kavi Mama and Sushma Mai for over 60 years from the time that they were in Gwalior. Binu Auntie, would you please come and say a few words?
Dear Sushma, Divya, Shefali, Ashish, Deepu, grandchildren, and the Bhargava, Gupta, Diwan, Sharan family. While we grieve at the passing away of a very divine soul, leaving behind the most loving family, cherished students and friends, we are gathered here, as was just mentioned, to remember Kavi and celebrate his multifaceted achievements and persona. I first met Sushma and Kavi in 1970 when I joined Probir in Gwalior after our marriage. I had heard of the legendary couple when he was admitted to hospital due to an attack of jaundice. When Mr. L.C. Gupta, Sushma's father, who was the chairman board of revenue, informed them of a young probationer who was in hospital. Kavi landed up and took over Probir's care. Probir recalls how grateful he was for the delicious soups that Sushma sent for him. It was manna from heaven, till his aunt came from Delhi and took him away. Strange as it sounds, we lost touch for a few years when they moved to Indore. But in 1975, Probi chanced upon Kavi in the transit hostel where officers stayed before they got government accommodation. Kavi was in Bhopal for a short spell. Neither was aware of the other's presence in the hostel. In 75, I got posted to Bhopal too and came with my mother and sister. We moved into a house in the newly constructed houses in Charamli. We then dared to invite Kavi for dinner at our home. That day, my mother had not been feeling very well, so the civil surgeon had come and examined her. He said all was well and to let her sleep. When Kavi came, we requested him to have a look at her after dinner, but he insisted on examining her before, and then, there and then, her BP was low and she was slowly sinking. Kavi immediately went, got the necessary medicines to give her a drip. A clothes hanger was used in place of a stand to hold the bottle. He sat up the whole night by her bedside. In the morning, before leaving for the medical college, he directed us to be at the hospital by 8:30 to admit her, and he would be waiting for us. And he was as we arrived. It was uncanny how things fell into place. The medical superintendent was known to us from Gwalior. Mr. Jacob, an undersecretary, had also been our colleague in Gwalior, and there was Kavi from Gwalior. My mother was admitted as a surgery patient as there was no other bed available under the charge of a Dr. Agarwal. He was very nervous as we were IAS officers who were reputed to be arrogant and cause problems for the doctor if anything went wrong. But Dr. Agarwal became our friend for life. No one could have done more under the circumstances. Her BP was so low that all efforts were made only to stabilize her BP before any other treatment could be thought of. As my father-in-law used to say, it was happenstance that Kavi was there to examine Mom, and she lived for another decade or more. For this, we are eternally grateful. While Sushma and Kavi were in Indore, our interactions were somehow few and years apart. When we visited them after the construction of their house, we saw how Kavi had used some simple methods to keep the house cool. Broken tiles on the roof and huge matkas overturned as insulation. At the same time, the sunken drawing room at the time, very new to MP, was also there. Another interesting concept that Sushma pointed out was the lobby from where she could keep an eye on the happenings in the house. And since then, I have taken to doing the same from my vantage point in front of the TV. They were a very handsome and complete couple, very proud of their daughters who had brought laurels for the parents. The son-in-laws were their sons, and the bonhomie shared with Deepu was amazing. The ribbing and leg pulling was infectious. Kavi and Sushma visited Divya and Ashish in Sydney every couple of years. Whenever they visited Shefali and Deepu, we would meet. On one occasion, Shefali even cooked some lunch before going to office. Her love for her parents extended even to us. These meetings were enriching, very stimulating, and full of laughter. No rancor, no cribbing, never boasting. But most enriching were the occasions we met after the shift to NCR. The flat was tastefully done up, very comfortable, catering to all their needs. Their room was their heaven, self-contained and quiet. The TV, the books, artifacts, fridge, stocked, whiskey, other drinks. When no one else was around, we sat there and had conversations. Very content, it was palpable. They were complete in themselves, but yet no one was excluded from them. All were embraced in that circle of contentment. One felt refreshed and came back with faith and rejuvenation. It was here we discovered Kavi's multifaceted personality. He would regale us with his experience in his long medical career, the stories of the medical college when they were students. Sushma has always been quiet, but when she spoke of her work, her voice and eyes would sparkle, forgetting her aches and pains. I have never heard her talking about her successes. But Kavi told us how a professor once asked a question of the class. Many tried to answer, but ultimately he said, "Now let's hear the answer from Sushma." When Sushma gave the right answer, he applauded her and appreciated the answer. We also learned how when patients were referred to Bombay in those days for further treatment, the hospitals did not accept the lab reports of the MP hospitals. But if the lab reports had Sushma's signatures, it was accepted without a murmur. We learned of their love for good chatpata and gourmet dishes, how his relationship with Didi was so close, as well as with Rajiv and Sanjeev. On his visits to Didi, he would carry some fresh fruits for her and come back with matar kachoris. Another bhabi we met would call up when there was chana, kulcha, and made at home, and send some back for Sushma with Kavi. He used to talk about his father and his ethics in the profession that he followed and ingrained in Kavi. Whenever Kavi was asked to give a second opinion, his father said, never run down the previous doctor's opinion and medicine. Continue with the same treatment for a few days, and then examine him again. My relationship with Kavi was as an elder person, elder brother. The human being in him and the humility in him was so apparent. Apart from his passion for medicine, he was passionate about music, poetry, Hindi, and his brilliant knowledge of Hindi, poetry, music, and mythology was amazing. His father or his grandfather, he once mentioned, had taught him to read the chaupais in the Ramcharitmanas. And Kavi mentioned that he still recited a few chaupais even today. The outpourings from his students, colleagues, friends, and patients is uplifting and makes one count one's blessings that we were also touched by him. Having been part of some family gatherings, one observed his relationship with the immediate and extended family, full of cheer and banter, affection and pride. He was in a rush to meet up and renew contact with all his relatives and rediscovered them. I realized how profound values were ingrained in the family, but at the same time, they were all so grounded. In early March, he sent me an excerpt from the Rig Veda with Hindi translations, knowing I know no Sanskrit, on Prakriti and the creation of the Brahmand. It was brilliant. A video clip sent to us shows Kavi reciting a poem, and I call it an ode to Sushma. So sweet, romantic, so from the heart. The emotions are beautiful, and if I'm not mistaken, it was on her birthday a few years ago, which I also attended, but I missed this part. What one gathers from the tsunami of messages outpouring globally from students, mostly in private hospitals, points to the perseverance and contribution to public hospital and medical teaching by Sushma and Kavi. A student writing said, "We never thought he's growing in age, as he remained a young friend of 30 years, always fit, impeccably dressed, always smiling, and ready to take challenges." This echoes how Prabir and I thought of him. Therefore, his going without a whisper hurts beyond expression. Sushma and Kavi walk the talk, so they have left a huge legacy of students and children as bright and brilliant, dedicated to serve in their chosen areas of work. Being head of the ethics committee in the medical college and hospital, Kavi led by example. As I will quote one of his students, "Punctual mannerisms and law-abiding, firm, unbiased decisions made the ethics committee popular." He accepted the challenge of improving conditions in the MY hospital when he became the superintendent and JDS HS of the hospital. And again, a student says, the rest is history. He was very happy with the work he had achieved in this post. Students recall Kavi's emphasis on professional conduct imbued in them, bedside manners, compassion, humility, cleanliness, and dignity in patient care. He called a book, Harrison's, I am told, or written by Harrison, Sushma would know, as the Bible for medical students, and had read out portions to Prabir when they were discussing a training program for caregivers. Very important. There's so much to remember and say, but I end with a message for the family, again by a friend. It is such a blessing to have parents who live beyond their lives in the hearts of so many. Kavi lives with us and walks beside us.
Thank you, Binu Aunty. I now request Professor Rajiv Bhargava to come and say a few words. Saroj, who is Kavi Mama's eldest sister, could not be here today, but her sons are here, and one of them, Professor Bhargava, will say a few words.
We are all here to celebrate Dr. Kavi Dutt Bhargava's life. He was 87, and many of us might think that this is not a bad time to go. Indeed, very few people in our family have lived this long. Kavi's father passed away when he was 54. His mother passed away when she was 53. So this is, this is a time to celebrate. He had a good life. And yet, we can't really fool ourselves. We can't deceive ourselves. We are already experiencing a deep sense of void. We feel the loss as his absence is sinking in. And there is much of his personality, admirable personality that we would cherish, and some aspects of which I'd like to mention on behalf of the entire family. The first thing that comes to mind is that he was a householder, which is to say that the life of production and reproduction was very important for him. Life of production, of course, is the kind of contribution he made towards the social life of his community, of the nation. He was a professional, he had a job, and he knew how to do that job. But he also had a family life. He has two wonderful daughters who are married to two wonderful human beings. Binaji has already mentioned them. And I'd like to say something more about both these aspects. His life as a professional, his life as an institutional person, and his life as a family man. If in the 60s, most Bhargavs, it's a kind of a small tribe. It's a small community. All Bhargavs got married to members of the same tribe. I can only think of one other person in the whole family who got married to someone outside his own community, outside his own jati. It was blasphemous to get married to someone who's not from your own Bhargav jati. One always feared excommunication. One feared what the children would be called if a Bhargav got married to what is called a non-Bhargav. But Kavi dared. He fell in love with Sushma when they were both students in the medical college. And he had resolved to get married to this very admirable person. And as Binaji has already mentioned, he was not only in love with her, but he deeply respected her. I don't know of anybody who admired his wife more than Kavi Mama. So this was one of those early intercaste marriages, and it was a great inspiration for people like him, people like us. 16 years later, when Tani and I got married, that's where the inspiration came from. He'd already paved the way for us. We had very little difficulty. I'm sure he paved the way for many others like us. And in a sense, then, both Kavi and Sushma epitomized a modern, progressive outlook, which was at odds, we have to accept, with the orthodoxy in our respective families. There was another very important thing about him. His father, as I mentioned, died young. He was only 54. But he left behind a very flourishing practice. He was a very famous doctor of his times. He had a clinic in Old Delhi, but he also had a clinic in Connaught Place. He was a medical doctor to practically every famous person in politics at that time. He was also attached to several public institutions. And it would have been very natural for Kavi Mama to have stepped into his father's shoes. But he and Sushma Mai were people who had their own mind. They didn't want to be part of the medical profession of Delhi. They wanted to lead a much quieter life. And they left Delhi for Gwalior and for Indore, later for Indore, to lead a much quieter academic life. Compared to Delhi, I mean, these are much smaller towns, and it must have taken a lot of thinking and effort to leave these, the fame and the wealth, the opportunity to make wealth in a place like Delhi, to go to less greener pastures. But they did that. They wanted to set up their own house. They wanted to live separately. But living separately never meant cutting off from the rest of the family, the larger family. His younger brothers, both Kavi Dutt, who is here, and his uncle's brothers, uncle's children, who he treated as his own children, many of whom are present here or must be watching this on YouTube. Living separately for him never meant living less affectionately or less lovingly. To just take two examples, when his father died, his father's oldest brother was still alive. And this old person made Gwalior his home. He went and lived with them. One of his chacha's son needed some guidance. He's here too, Shailendra. And he went and lived with both of them in Gwalior. So they were a very affectionate couple who welcomed their family members, their extended family members, who stayed for very long in their own small flat in Gwalior. I don't think there is anybody from his family who didn't love him, didn't respect him, didn't admire him, didn't learn from him. He very admirably combined the virtues of a nuclear family with the virtues of an extended joint family. He knew how to do that. And of course, Sushma Mai had a very important role to play in that. He was always available to everybody. He was there to advise people. And yet he was never over-eager to advise. He was very parsimonious. He was never intrusive. He gave advice only to those people who sought his advice. He believed in autonomy, the autonomy of individuals. He believed that each must learn to lead his own or her own life. Each must find answers to life's major questions. Each must carve out a path for himself or herself. That was true not only of his younger brothers and sisters, but also of his children. Each must discover and rediscover life's many mysteries. So he didn't believe that people could lead their lives on their own, alone, but he was never a strong communitarian. He never imposed himself on others. He didn't believe in compulsory collectivity. The other thing, of course, and again, Binu has already mentioned this, but his commitment to medical ethics. He was compassionate. He had a lot of empathy. He had practical wisdom, what the Greeks called phronesis. He put the interest of the patient before his own interest, before self-interest. He knew that patients who come to him are anxious, are fearful, are in real or imaginary pain, and they're extremely vulnerable. But he never took advantage of that vulnerability. In business, the vulnerability of the competitor, of the adversary, of the other, is to be exploited for one's benefit very often in business, unethical business. But he never thought medicine was business. Not only that, he didn't think that medicine was just a technical profession. There was always a strong moral component to medicine. He was a very strong institutional person. He was an administrator, and that has also been mentioned. And I would unhesitatingly say that in his institutional life, he was a liberal Democrat. First of all, he believed in rules. Institutions must have rules. And he firmly implemented those rules. He never misused his power. He was incorruptible. He treated everyone, all his faculty members, his students, his staff, his patients, with dignity and with respect. He was always willing to converse with people. He was willing to explain things to people. He was an extremely patient, very good listener. He privileged teaching and hospital patients over private practice. And in private practice, he always prioritized the poor over the rich. He wouldn't take tantrums from patients. A lot of patients are over-demanding. They want to be over-medicated, but he would have none of that. He was firm. He had no time for such tantrums. But he was always humble. He had humility. And one could say that he had a therapeutic parsimony. I don't think my tribute to him would be complete without mentioning some of the qualities that he had as a human being, as a person. He was always calm in the face of uncertainty. The world is full of uncertainties, and he knew that. But he never lost his composure. He had fortitude in the face of troubles, his own troubles and the troubles of those around him. He was patient in a chaotic, disorderly, and messy world. He had no shame or embarrassment in recognizing, in acknowledging his limitations and his fallibility, his own ignorance. He accepted what was beyond his powers. In other words, he was a man of wisdom. we disagreed. We had minor disagreements and some major disagreements, but such disagreements never turned into animosity. The last thing I want to say is that his elder sister, my mother, adored him, and he loved and adored her. My mother is 3 years older to him. And when I was born, he was about 17 or 18 years old. He was a student, and before I was born, he had already decided what to gift me. He had designed a little cupboard, and he went to the carpenter, and he made him make that almirah, which he had designed. It was about 2.5 feet tall, high, and about maybe about this much in width. But more importantly, there was a mirror. Half of it had a mirror. And when I was 4 or 5 years old, I would stood before the mirror. I could see myself, the whole of myself. But I think that mirror was there for a purpose, not to encourage vanity in a person, but to be a mirror to yourself. Basically, it taught me to look at myself a little more critically. And I think that is one of the legacies that he left for me personally. And that cupboard is still around, and 70 years later, he found that cupboard in one of our cottages in the hills, and he was delighted to see it still being there, and I'm delighted that he was delighted to see it. And there, I think I will always take inspiration. I'll go back to that little cupboard, and I'll see myself in the mirror, and I'll keep thinking about how to make myself better and how to emulate him, because he was a role model for all of us. He was an inspiration for all of us. All of us. All my 2 brothers, my chachas, my bua. So I think he was a wonderful man, a man we will miss, but a man who we will continue to take inspiration from. Thank you.
Thank you for that very detailed description of your experience with your mama. I would now request Dr. Ashish Diwan to come and say a few words. From what we know of Kavi Mama, he would have been the kind of person who would not have considered a marriage as giving a daughter away, but gaining a son. And so here is Dr. Ashish, son-in-law, son to Kavi Mama.
Thank you, Aranyani. And thank you, Deepu, for asking me to speak on behalf of Shefali and Divya and all our kids. However, it will be remiss of me not to mention all his other kids, undergraduate and postgraduate students. They have already been mentioned by Benu Auntie and by Rajiv, many of whom are here with us today. But there are certain scripts that I'll pick up. One comes from Dr. Rakesh Kakani, one of his students, who summarized to me in a phone call that Professor Keri and Sushma Bhargava not only taught us medicine, but more importantly, they taught us how to be a doctor and how to conduct ourselves as doctors. There are numerous others who have contributed to this conversation, Dr. Dharkar, Dr. Bahrani. They have all said, and along with almost literally hundreds of the students, they have articulated similar emotions and thoughts. So what I summarize from that is that KDB essentially taught us, and when I say us, I say as doctors, to communicate a skill which was not even identified in those days as a core competency in medical education. He practiced what he preached. He connected with his patients at a human level, full of empathy. He always found an effective solution to the problem that did not just damage their liver or kidneys, but also did not damage their hip pockets. A lot of us have observed this firsthand. But during all this, he never failed to acknowledge that the foundations of his excellence were based on his good understanding of human disease and suffering, which is called pathology. And he always attributed his success of understanding the pathology to the academically superior in the relationship, his beloved wife. Anyway, more importantly, at the end of the day, his patients received great clinical outcomes, compassion, and care. The reason I mention that is that he never failed to berate the loss of public medicine, and for that matter, good quality medical teaching. I'm sure numerous of his close students and colleagues would have received gentle lashings when he felt frustrated that his point of view and his ambition for his art of medicine and the goodness of his patients was not being fully realized in the medical systems of today. However, he accepted some of those failures with a heavy-hearted, "Yar chalo, aage badho." But I know firsthand that at best he was distressed and in agony, and at its worst, he was disgusted as to where medical science and education and the art of teaching was going. But he continued to practice the medicine as best as he could, even to his end. When we were bringing his body in an ambulance back to the home for the viewing, Shefali's phone rang with his patients from Indore still chasing him. She had to tell them that he stopped seeing patients because he is in a Hear's van behind our car. Interestingly, however, it was not just medical students who benefited with his philosophy of mentoring and teaching. He also used it on non-medicos, especially in the field of business. Vijay Jain, his business advisor, and almost his surrogate son, says to me that Dr. Bhargava taught me how to comply with the law and to pay taxes, always and in time. Interesting, we talk about taxes at such occasions. Little did Vijay know that what he was being taught was risk mitigation, similar principles we use in medicine, and wealth protection advice. And he acknowledged that he has made other people richer using these simple methods, paying taxes and complying with the law. Who knew that it makes people rich? KDB started his life in Delhi, pretty much ended here, and he fought battles in Bhopal, Gwalior, Canada. But his true karma bhumi was Indore. His department at the MY Hospital and Mahatma Gandhi Medical College have organized condolences, and so also has the Indian Medical Association of Indore. The number of stories and tales that people that he touched in Indore is incredible. And in the days to come, more of him will remember him in Indore in formal gatherings. We as a family wish to acknowledge that, as we are not in Indore currently, but one or some of us will make our way as and when we are required to. Indore was also where he grew his two young daughters and looked after his in-laws. each role that he completed with rigor and passion. Whether it was being involved with the Kendriya Vidyalaya activities or moving his evening time medical practice within the home premises of his in-laws so they could be looked after, he applied vigor and consistency. There are stories that he used to climb the water tanks in the school to look for, I think, listeria, but he found rats instead. No wonder the school performed well. His pride in the achievement of his girls, while subdued externally, was always filled with internal joy. Shefali's elevation to the highest levels of the government was an immense proudful moment that he continued to celebrate literally till the end of his life. While it hurted him initially that his very bright daughter Divya had to sacrifice clinical medicine for supporting my career and our kids in a new country, his heart filled with joy when she progressed to a PhD, did intensive research, and then went on to found and chair an exciting biotech startup. He had molded them both very, very well. I am a spinal surgeon. He used to always say, यार सर्जन तो डॉक्टर तब बनता है जब थोड़ा सोचने लगता है. While I was putting this together at 3 in the morning today, I was trying to reflect whether he ever called me a doctor. That is unfinished business between the two of us. I may check with him sometimes else. But what I meant to say when I said I'm a surgeon is that I'm not a wordsmith. So in my role here today, I'm more a collator and transmitter of numerous thoughts, emotions. So what I did is rely on our own children to articulate and provide some of those words. The grandkids, Amia in New York, Yash in Philadelphia, Anirudh at Yale, and Maitri, who's here on her break from Oxford, are the ones who have contributed. And I have selected 2 in their entirety to talk about. So when I look up from my notes or I switch to Hindi, they are my annotations to their eulogies. Here is what Anirudh had to say. Growing up, I never noticed it, but now the more I think, the more I realize how much of Nana is a part of me. Not just a big part of my life, but my personality itself, my very being. His drive to make friends everywhere, every day, his excitement for talking to new people and to hear their stories, be it strangers, celebrities, or workers. That photograph, incidentally, is with him standing between 2 celebrities, Shabana on one side and Tani on the other side. We had to crop that image. The boys are the ones who selected that image. Anyway, coming back to Anirudh's. His insistence on helping others, regardless of the discomfort he had to endure. His drive to keep exploring and becoming multifaceted by not only excelling in his work, but also carving out space for other things in life, like poetry. Very consistent with what you've heard from Benu Aunty and from Professor Bhargava. His ability to be idealistic, backed by his determination to make it work despite all odds. His way of creating his unique relationship with religion, money, and with food. And his endless romanticism, be it in his never-ending admiration of Nani or his way of interpreting life as philosophy through random recitations of poetry. There are several admirable qualities that Nana had, but the one that amazes me the most and that I will forever strive to replicate is his drive for life, the ability to remain excited for truly living every single day. Thank you, Anirudh. That was just wonderful. Now from Yash. He has titled it Young Man. My Nana was a titan. Anyone who was lucky enough to have met Dr. Kavi Bhargava knew that he possessed a unique ability to forge a special and memorable connection with anyone in any circumstances after meeting them for even the briefest of moments. As grandkids, on occasional outings to Sri Maya's restaurant in Indore, have to mention Sri Maya's, that's where we got married, we became accustomed to stopping at every second person who inevitably would come up to shake his hand or touch feet. By the end of each meal, Nana would have met at least 10 friends and made 10 more. These friends could have been the mayor of Indore, a colleague's wife's cousin's husband's mother, or a busboy of the restaurant. It didn't matter to Nanu. He would always find a time to relate to you, to make you feel relevant, and to anoint you a permanent relative. During these interactions, the four of us would roll our eyes at each other. Another one of Nanu's friends. Little did we know that we had the privilege of being raised with excellence as the norm. That this man could be so impressive that everyone would want to be his friend, yet so humble that they would want to remain his friend. That was Nanu, always putting others first. I hear he passed peacefully in his sleep, typically Nanu. Selfless in life and selfless in death. I'm glad he didn't suffer, but I know he's content that he never made anyone else suffer too. Two things Nana couldn't stand: being a burden and lukewarm food. It's not possible to speak about Nanu without speaking of his enduring love for Nani. In many ways, Nanu was an old school alpha male. The handsome man of the house, on whom everyone in his inner circle relied. And yet, he always had the courage to loudly admit that his wife was his better, smarter, and wiser half. He doted on her right till the end. They met in college. Nanu loved medicine, brilliance, and kindness. In Nani, he found the most brilliant, warm-hearted topper of the medical school. Nani was educated, reserved, humble, and of a different caste. Everything that the senior of the Bhargava family were not. And they let him know. Nanu didn't care. He had found love of his life and would remain happy with his choice for the rest of his life. One of the many instances that Nanu, the traditionalist, would become the maverick. More on the Bhargav thing, we'll wait for Tani's novel. Bhargav, my in-laws, she can, title it for her. Anyway, Nana wore many hats: doctor, professor, employer, poet, scholar. But in the flood of tributes that have flowed in the past week, three stand out the most: teacher, role model, and father figure. Many family members have said that they saw him not as a generic uncle, Aranyani, you mentioned that, but closer to a second father. Multiple accounts from former students recall that his lasting impact was not as a teacher of medicine, but a teacher of life. I know that many of those who worked for him did not consider him a boss, but more like family. What he means here is the staff at his home. They loved him for the respect he showed them and reflected that warmth towards his daughters and kids. So what he gave the others, that warmth has come back to his own children and his grandkids. In part, it was his impeccable character and belief in the best possible versions of others that made him such a transcendental educator. But his brightest asset was the instant fondness and familiarity that he created. He loved and treated his son-in-laws like his own sons. Amiyas and my significant others were lucky enough to have met him. After one meeting, they each became best of friends. He would leave Priyanka, who's Amiya's fiancée and is doing cardiology in New York. So he rings her up and leaves long voicemails before she starts her grounds and gives her advice what to do with patients, and exchanged lengthy and heartfelt emails with Caroline, who's Yash's significant one. And frankly, this dunya mein, who brings in the prospective in-laws of your grandfather, gets them to stay at your home, and washes down the evening with a single malt, exchanging stories, and then sends them away. So Kiran and Meghna, Priyanka's parents, were the fortunate ones to have met them before I and Divya could, they were the last to meet and speak to him instead of me and Divya. It was wonderful. Anyway, back to what Yash has to say. I think the question we all had is, where does he get the energy and motivation to maintain all these relationships? In my final in-person interaction, 2 days after his 86th birthday, so he was here in December, I asked him about his father. Nana, the strongest and bravest man I knew, broke into tears as he recalled his father passing when he was just 26. 60 years later, he was still hurting. I don't cry normally. I'm supposed to be bereft of emotions. That's what people tell me. That he had to bear the responsibility of patriarch and the provider for a large family so young with limited help. I know that he sought to be leader and inspiration that he himself was bereft of. That was his driving force. So he answers the question, where does he get the motivation from? And it goes back to that story. And then there is Nana and food. Food would be slathered with superlatives, and ghee, of course. The mangoes were always juiciest. The kebabs were also the spiciest. Piping hot pulkas, that is how food was described by him. And there's Nana waking us up in the holidays saying, boys, at your age, you need to be as active as possible. There's Nana reciting poetry. There's Nana looking after me whenever I was sick. A warm glass of milk cured all. Nana was an incredible physician. I owe my life to him. When I was 10, I had 3 renowned Australian infectious disease doctors stumped. They didn't know what I had. Nanu knew instantly that I had typhoid, and his diagnosis kept me alive. Then there's Nana standing proud in a fresh pressed suit, a cap sitting neatly on a perfect silvery head of hair. But my favorite memory would be whenever you walked into a room or first met him after a while, Nana would slap you on the back with a big smile. He'd say, young man, that's Nanu to me, energetic, playful, and loving. And that's how I'll address him when I see him next. Because that's what he was, and always will be in my eyes, a young man. Thank you, Yash. Now, all that Yash has said was quoted to me by Ma. She summed it up with professorial precision. When I arrived from Sydney, 2 a.m., and met her at 6 a.m. the next morning, she tells me, Ashish, with his going away, hum sabka bachpana chala gaya. On behalf of Shefali, Deepu, and Divya, our 4 kids, and Ma, Professor Sushma Bhargava, allow me to thank one and all of you who have expressed the thoughts felt for KD's loss, made time to come here, or could not make time to come here. A heartfelt gratitude. Papa would have loved you all for coming here. He would have loved this moment, as he's going to love the anthology of his poetry that Shefali and Divya are preparing, which should be ready in 6 to 8 weeks. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Thank you, Ashish, for the very moving tribute and particularly the tributes of the grandchildren. Our final speaker for today is Geetika, niece of Kavi Mama. I request you to please come and say a few words.
I'm just going to share some lovely childhood memories from Indore. Many long summers spent with Masi, Mosaji, or Jiju as I used to call him, because he was Jiju to mom, he was Jiju to all the mamas. So I also ended up calling him Jiju. A lot of people still ask me, how is he Jiju to you? I'm like, no, he's Jiju University to everybody. I have lovely and happy memories of Indore, riding on his scooter, standing in front on the footboard while he used to be on the scooter, till I was tall enough for him not to be able to see. And of course, somebody mentioned the lovely juicy mangoes. Somebody mentioned the lovely chaat from Chappan Dukan, Sarafa Bazaar, the Imartis, and all the other lovely food from Indore. Those are all very happy memories that I'm going to have. And of course, the fact that as my father, he encouraged me to write. A lot of the poetry that I've written over the years has been done in Indore, which he has admired, and he always encouraged me to continue writing. So I have a question that came to my mind when I was writing this. What does it really take to touch the lives of people, to be remembered after you pass? Does it take a large amount of time? Does it take an intelligent mind? Does it mean you dream big? Does it take caring or daring? Does it take the courage to break some molds, to reinvent the wheel? Does it mean you always walk the straight path? Does it mean you call a spade when need be? Does it mean you enjoy the good things in life and make sure others enjoy them too? Share, care, be aware, live life with flair. What does it really take? To me, it takes three simple things, and our beloved Kavi Mosaji, or Jiju to me, had all of them. The heart of a family man, the mind of a healer, and the soul of a poet. And with these, he touched the lives of all of us in the family, from the youngest to the oldest. His connect with his students, his patients, and his colleagues went way beyond the call of a normal professional. And so he will live on in every life that he ever touched. We are sure you are smiling down upon us, dear Jiju, from your special place up in heaven, and we hope that you will always do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Geetika. This brings us to the end of the prayer meeting today. We would just like to inform you that there is tea and some snacks downstairs for all of you. And on behalf of Kavi Mama's entire family, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here today, for joining us and celebrating his life, and for loving him and remembering him. Thank you.
बंद हो गया